When you hear Henry VIII, you think 6 wives. That's the neat classroom version. The real story is stranger, a court where a man could rise by managing the royal toilet, where portraits were engineered like propaganda posters, and where one crash in the tilt yard helped turn a charming prince into a hard, suspicious ruler. This isn't some made-up tale. This is how Henry lived, the habits and rituals that turned one man into a monarchy. Start at his table. Breakfast at Tudor court was not a pastry and a coffee. Household accounts show meat, manchette bread and ale or wine pouring out of Hampton Court's vast kitchens, an operation big enough to feed a town. On fast days, the menu pivoted to fish and Lenten dishes. The point was continuity and display. Sweet, spiced confections and rich sauces were status on a plate, and over time, a tax on his health. Feeding the king fed the state. Butchers and bakers, brewers and clerks, turnspits, wood haulers, you name it, everyone was fed. A morning meal was logistics, employment and message all at once. Power, in Henry's world, lived behind doors. The groom of the stool sounds like a joke. It wasn't. In a court where proximity meant influence, the man who managed the king's most private moments controlled access to the Privy Chamber, the true engine room of Tudor politics. Papers were slipped for signature there. Moods were read before council met. Names for favours and offices rose or fell in a quiet word. Protocols laid down who could approach, when and how, and a tiny inner circle learned to read the king's face before the realm felt his decisions. If you want to understand the Tudor government, don't look first at the throne. Look at the key to the small door beside it. Henry loved movement, contest, and display. In his youth, he was tall, athletic, and tireless. Hunting, hawking, archery, real tennis, and above all, the joust. Tournaments were not a hobby. They were theatre. Velvet banners, musicians, badges with the Tudor rose and the portcullis, a blaze of colour and heraldry. The country saw a king of vigour and chivalry, and though courtiers learned that beating the king was unwise, the point wasn't the scoreline, it was the spectacle. The message landed. The monarch was strong, generous, victorious, and very much on stage. Then came the fall. In 1536, a crash in the lists left Henry badly hurt, the leg wound ulcerated and never truly healed. Diplomats who visited Henry reported 3 things. He either wore bandages or dressings on his injured leg. He moved less than before, and his temper was shorter. Physicians tried basic treatments for his leg wounds, and even perfumes to mask odour. The king rode less, stood less, walked rooms more slowly. Councils shortened when he was uncomfortable. Audiences grew more formal, or in fact more carefully staged. Policy from then on followed the body as much as the pen. If the body was failing, the image would not. Enter Hans Holbein. By the mid-1530s, Holbein set Henry's famous power pose in a confrontational portrait style that broadcasts dominance. Workshops copied it onto panel after panel. Ambassadors recorded the shock of seeing it. Clothes did half the work. Padded doublets, fur, gold chains, a glinting codpiece, and later, Greenwich armours built for breadth and presence rather than speed. This wasn't decoration, it was instruction. This is what a king looks like. The painted Henry is not a portrait of a moment, it's a template for behaviour. Image wasn't just on walls, it walked the roads. Royal progressors took the crown to towns, abbeys, and great houses. Temporary arches went up. Pageants cast the king as David, Solomon, or a new Constantine. Guilds performed allegories. The royal devices hung everywhere. After the break with Rome, picture and policy met on the page. The Great Bible's famous frontispiece shows a diagram of power. God at the top, Henry below, bishops and councillors beneath him, the people at the bottom receiving the word from the king's hands. It's a picture, yes, but also a constitutional claim. The same chain of authority that you watched, enacted in processions, was printed for your parish and nailed into your memory. Even the unglamorous tools of government taught people how to see power and use it to take money. Mid-reign coin designs put Henry's head front and centre, so everyday spending meant handling the king's image. Charters and court orders move under the Great Seal with the enthroned monarch engraved on it, justice literally struck in wax. Late in life, Henry authorised papers with a dry stamp, a pressed facsimile of his signature, so business could proceed even when he couldn't write. Type, seal, portrait, a visual system that made the state feel physical and near. Henry's days still had music. He kept instruments, choirs, and manuscripts. He knew the thrill of performance and the humiliation of doing it badly, which is why so much court life was scripted to please. He dressed for effect too. Cut, colour, fur, and jewel placement weren't accidents, but choices that repeated the message Holbein had frozen in paint. Even armour became a kind of architecture around him, broad, gleaming, deliberate. As the body narrowed his world, the wardrobe and the workshop widened his presence. presence. None of this happened in a vacuum. Court rituals protected the king from disease and danger, but they also protected his myth. Who could enter which room, how food moved, when doors shut and candles were snuffed. All of it carried meaning about access and grace. A visitor might see only a polished surface. Insiders read small signs as he approached: the fresh bandage, the way he breathed, the mood in the room, so therefore adjusted accordingly. When Henry's mood turned, patronage could turn with it. Friends fell. Even kings need reliable rituals when pain will not leave. You'll hear stories on the edges of this, tall tales repeated so often they feel true. The wise way to handle them is simple: tell the myth, then say what the record shows. Was there a ritual of servants kissing the bed linen each night? Chamber protocol was intense, but that specific practice isn't solidly attested. Did a visiting tennis opponent end up in a cell for beating him? Or is this all a great story with thin evidence? Did the king's body dramatically rupture after death? Or is that a later anecdote? Contemporary records are sparse. What we can say with confidence is already astonishing enough. A ruler whose private rooms ran public policy, whose wound shaped government, and whose picture rewired obedience. The king's day often begins with advice you don't see on portraits. Physicians bring urine glasses, surgeons bring bandages, apothecaries bring jars that smell of honey and herbs. For the leg, they lance and drain, then pack with poultices. For the odor, they try rose water and ambergris. Pain relief was modest with wine and tiny doses of opiate syrup. Doctors set a diet, but the palace kept serving rich dishes anyway. The king asks for relief that lets him stand, sign, and hear petitioners. Treatment is not a miracle, it is maintenance. The body is kept serviceable so government can move. You won't find the king in a marble tub every morning. Cleanliness here means fresh linen, not daily bathing. Shirts and bed sheets are changed often. Hands are washed in basins brought to the chair. Scented waters touch the temples and wrists. Floors are strewn with rushes and herbs to sweeten the air. The point is comfort and control, not sparkle. The palace had strict, separate pathways and routines for delivering food and removing waste, and staff kept them apart to avoid contamination. In a crowded palace, hygiene is choreography. Safety is a job, not a hope. Doors are watched by yeomen of the guard. Food is covered, carried, and, when risk feels high, tasted before it reaches the cup. Dishes follow fixed corridors. Knives and cups are counted in and counted out. Letters arrive, broken open by clerks who log the hand and the seal. Disturbing because it is constant, this vigilance is also ordinary. The crown cannot afford accidents, so it budgets for caution minute by minute. Getting dressed is policy in cloth. The wardrobe of robes records fur, velvet, and jewel work, chosen to widen the figure and draw the eye. A doublet is padded not for warmth, but for presence. Chains place light where the painter wants it. Even if Henry isn't riding much anymore, wearing spurs still signals he's the martial ruler. Tailors fit around the bandage. Armorers adjust plates. Nothing is casual. When pain narrows the day, clothing widens the room for him. The chapel royal sets the clock. Even after the break with Rome, music and prayer divide the hours. The choir sings. The organ holds a line under the words. This is not escape, which is a specific rhythm. A court that sings together is easier to steer. Between services, consorts rehearse for feasts, and the king hears the difference between a room that is ready and a room that is not. Harmony is part of order. Palaces look grand, they draft like ships. Keeping a king warm is a logistics problem. Servants stoke fires on a timetable. Tapestries cut drafts, and layered shutters tame the wind. Candles are counted out by the pound and recalled by tally at night. Windows admit light and gossip, yet ushers decide which ones open. Comfort is never free. It is planned, guarded, and written down. Government arrives in stacks, warrants, grants, pardons, and even recognizances. On good days, the hand writes. On bad days, clerks bring the block that presses his name. Councillors control who reaches the table and in what order. The king's temper changes the air. If he sits forward, business flies. If he leans back, the room shortens its sentences and edits itself. Policy feels like posture, long before it feels like law. Evenings close with the same discipline that opened the kitchens. Rooms are cleared in sequence. Candles darken by rule. Bed curtains are drawn, and the guard settles to its watch. Even at day's end, one last document he signs, or stamps, makes a real decision that affects someone far away. Each new day starts at the fireplaces, and from there, the whole court's routine restarts again. So when you think of Henry VIII, don't start with the wedding rhyme. Start with the machinery that turned habit into rule. Breakfast wasn't appetite, it was employment and theatre. A toilet valet wasn't comic, he was a gatekeeper. A fall from a horse wasn't an episode, it was a hinge in a reign. A portrait wasn't likeness, it was law and colour. Progresses weren't holidays, they were a moving classroom in how to be ruled. Coins, seals, and a stamped name weren't paperwork, they were daily lessons in where authority authority lived. That's the bizarre core of Henry's life, the everyday turned into instruments of power. And once you see it, you'll start to spot the pattern everywhere, in the jewels, the armor, the arches, the Bible page, the coin in a market stall. One man, many images, one message repeated until even his enemies could recite it. This is what it meant to be a king in Tudor England.